Nation to Nation. I'm Karen Pugliese. Now, US President Donald Trump has been making repeated threats to take control of Greenland, and he's actually openly spoken about taking over Canada as well since returning to office. The US president says, well, a lot of things, and it's easy to dismiss those threats as bluster. But then something happened on January 3rd. The United States launched a military strike in Venezuela and detained the country's sitting president, Nicolas Maduro, along with his wife. The Trump administration said the operation was aimed at stopping drug trafficking, but Trump's critics say it's about access to the country's crude oil reserves, which the US now controls. Trump has said the US will occupy the country so long as Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, who's assumed power, goes along with US demands. The military action against Venezuela just took the world by surprise, but according to Trump and officials, it had been secretly planned for months. Since then, Trump turned his attention back to Greenland. Here he is speaking at Davos.
But every NATO ally has an obligation to be able to defend their own territory. And the fact is, no nation or group of nations is in any position to be able to secure Greenland other than the United States. And this, to get to this rare earth, you got to go through hundreds of feet of ice. That's not the reason we need it.
APTN reporter Angel Moore was just in Greenland, covering the chaos unfolding on the ground as Trump threatened invasion, but then appeared to pull back, and media from around the world rushed in. Angel, welcome.
Thank you.
Angel, I understand as soon as you landed in Greenland, you rushed to a press conference, and it was pretty unsettling.
Yes, it was very unsettling. The minister spoke in Greenlandic, which is a traditional language. Most people, a lot of people don't speak English. The minister, Peter Borg, is the Minister of Fisheries, and he told people to be prepared to be able to stay home for 5 days and have enough food and to survive without power. He also said it wasn't in response to an actual threat, that it was about safety and security, but it did make the threat more real, and it was quite unsettling.
Why do you think he said that if there was no actual threat?
This came the day after Trump said he would use force to take over Greenland. So the minister told people to stock up on medicines, candles, to be able not only to be able to stay home for 5 days, but also to focus on local hunting and fishing to be sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I can completely understand that in a way because of what happened in Venezuela. That would have really, it surprised the world. And it must have been going through people's minds whether or not there was some secret, military action being planned, or just how serious were these threats. How were people on the ground reacting?
People told me that they were scared, and interestingly, people didn't really talk about Venezuela. They're very aware of the threats to Canada becoming the quote unquote 51st state. They said either Greenland will be the 51st state or Canada will be the 52nd state, depending how it goes. So they were taking the threat quite seriously. And they also spoke about, they said that people seem to forget that Trump did make these threats in 2019 to purchase Greenland, which, was debunked by the Prime Minister of Denmark. But people were quite scared.
Yeah, it's really easy to kind of have things flash by in what Trump said or didn't say in 2019, because it did seem that he'd been in office before. Here he was back, and we kind of knew him. But this is a whole different United States with everything unfolding internally and externally there. It does seem like all the media had the same time, or the same idea, I should say, at the same time. Let's get to Greenland. Let's get boots on the ground in Greenland. I was just wondering, if you could tell me, despite the media circus that was going on, did you get any sense of what it's like to live there when there isn't a media circus going on?
It was really a beautiful city. The population is about 20,000 people, and this city surrounds a fjord. And one side is the downtown part with the old Nuuk, they call it, where the Danish settlers first came. And then in the middle is the fishery wharf with the commercial fishery, which is quite significant, of course, to the economy. And then the other side is new apartment buildings, and they're Danish style buildings. The older houses were painted very bright colors, like in Atlantic Canada. But the city itself, I couldn't believe it was only 20,000 people. There was a lot of restaurants, a lot of shops. There's art galleries, museum, the beautiful Nuuk Cultural Center, and there was a lot of construction going on. So you get this feeling that it's booming. And a lot of people walk. I noticed a lot of people walking and walking far. The temperature does not get as cold as Canada. And when we were there, there was about 5 hours of daylight. But it's a bustling place, and there's a big sports arena that people participate in, and people told me that they kayak and hike the mountains that are just along the background of beautiful large mountains.
A bustling place. Okay, so that explains a lot. Like that really helps us get a feel for what it's like to be there when the media is not there. But of course, the media was there. And how did that change things?
People told me they were tired of media, of being asked the same question, right? What do you think of the threat, over and over again? And they told me that, they're more than an island that Trump wants. They're people with stories and lives and histories, and they've been there for thousands of years. So they wanted to talk about that. The people I spoke to actually didn't want to talk about Trump. By the time we got there, they were already swarmed by media. They wanted to share their stories and, develop a relationship with journalists. Kind of what happened reminded me of parachute journalism, where you go in and get a comment and then leave. And, because of the situation, that was what was happening. So, which is unfortunate.
Okay, well, we are going to be back because the threat to Greenland is not over, and Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen warned on Monday that while US President Donald Trump has ruled out military force, Washington still fundamentally seeks to control the Arctic island. What is all this about? We'll talk about that when we come back.
Showing the world that he will treat indigenous people like a thing. We are people, and we are not for sale, and not part of us are for sale, not anything like that. So I don't trust him, and I am not sure how long this will take before we establish a trust relation again.
Welcome back to Nation. I'm Karen Pugliese here with Angel Moore, and we're joined by APTN reporter Jesse Stanford as well today. And we're talking about threats to Greenland's sovereignty. Let's take a step back and look at why this happened. Jesse, what does President Trump say he's focused on in Greenland?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we discovered speaking with people on the ground in Greenland is how few people actually believed anything that President Trump said at all. And so we were working with people who were saying, well, he does say he is concerned about Arctic sovereignty. And he's concerned in particular with the potential for incursion by Russia or by China in the north through Greenland, apparently. Although, a number of people have pointed out there are other routes by which those countries could take if they were interested in attacking North America or what have you. So that's something that's certainly been on the table. And the other thing that kind of brought that into question was the position of military bases on the island, which is something I know that Angel wanted to speak about, because there is a current situation whereby the Americans have a fairly open right to have military placement on the island of Greenland.
And Angel, what were you hearing?
I was hearing the same thing, that people actually do not trust Trump, and as we've seen in the media, he changes his mind every 5 minutes, it seems, and they don't believe it's about Arctic security. The Americans have a base in the north since 1951, and it's quite a large military base. And it's actually through their space department monitoring, from the sky. So people don't think that is the real reason. Of course, everybody thinks that the real reason is critical minerals.
Right.
There's a vast wealth of untouched critical minerals in Greenland, and of course, that's kind of the golden egg that people are talking about.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, in the world of critical minerals are becoming more and more important. They're the things that like you need to run EVs. You need them for artificial intelligence. The world needs the supply, and right now China controls most of it. So this was something that Trump was saying about Canada as well, that if he took over Canada, it was kind of under his breath to Prime Minister Trudeau that he said he was looking at critical minerals here as well. And I guess we could point to, we started off the top of the show talking about Venezuela. Is it about drugs? Is it about oil? So is this about Arctic security? Is it about critical minerals? We hear it both. Angel, things did de-escalate, at least temporarily.
This is, as I said, this is about world order. This is about international law. This is about respecting territorial integrity. I believe that the world will not take that turn so drastically.
The Prime Minister is saying he's in high-level negotiations. What's that about?
That happened after Trump said in the media that he would not use force to take Greenland. And then the next day there was this press conference, and he did say that the Prime Minister did say that he's not part of the negotiations and he's not sure what is being discussed. A reporter did ask him if minerals were on the part of the subject in the talks, and the Prime Minister did say no. So that is interesting. So if he said he didn't know what was being discussed, but he did know that minerals were not part of that discussion, which I found interesting.
If I can just add to that, he also indicated, well, yes, we might be open to critical mineral mining or what have you, but only under the framework of the environmental standards that we already have set here in Greenland. And that was one of his strong underlying messages out of that press conference is if we're going to critical minerals, yes, we can talk about that, but we're going to talk about it within the framework of our environmental framework as it exists currently.
So a lot of this sort of maintaining sovereignty. Sorry, go ahead, Angela.
Well, exactly that. He did also say that this is about world order, and about NATO. And he said this isn't just about Greenland, which a lot of people have been saying.
Yeah.
And he said he hoped that the discussions will be successful, and that NATO was developed after World War II, and it has been successful keeping world peace since. And he stressed that he hopes that the NATO members will step up, and that this will not easily fall, where Trump does take Greenland. So he did take it to the bigger picture, and which was very interesting and a bit frightening, frankly.
Angel, the Prime Minister also spoke of gratitude for allies, and I understand there was a lot of military added on the ground. What did you see while you were there?
There was a lot of military on the ground, and they were dressed in their combat uniforms and walking around in like little groups, all over the place. There's military there, of course, from Denmark, Norway, Sweden, I think Germany as well, perhaps other countries. So to see that presence was, for me, in a way, it was comforting, but yet scary, to all of a sudden see these military. So I can't imagine what Greenlanders feel, especially the children seeing this presence, just this quiet presence, which was, upsetting in a way.
And we're going to take a pause there, but that's something to think about and something to talk about when we get back. How much needing foreign support to protect your sovereignty changes how people think about sovereignty and also decolonization. So we'll have that when we come
back. We don't think that there's such a thing as a better colonizer. Very clearly seeing from right of the beginning that the way in which we were spoken about by the US President Trump gave connotations to times that should be long gone, where state leaders and the world society mainstream-wise considered indigenous peoples as someone you can just buy or sell.
There's no such thing as a better colonizer. That was Sarah Olsvig speaking, and Olsvig is a former leader of Greenland's Autonomy party. She previously held one of Greenland's 2 seats in Denmark's parliament, and since 2022, she served as chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, representing Inuit from Greenland, Canada, Alaska, and Russia. Jesse, I was wondering if you could explain a little bit of the political governance of Greenland. What is its relationship to Denmark?
So Greenland was colonized by Denmark, and that colonial history is long and complicated. And I was reminded by pretty much everybody that I spoke with that it was very different than the colonial history between Canada and Indigenous peoples in the Canadian territory. But in 1979, Greenland moved to what was called Home Rule, which was a kind of a shift away from being governed by Denmark. And then in 2009, they achieved a formal self-governance within the framework of the Kingdom of Denmark. So they are, in a sense, Greenland is, as it's known locally, Kalaallit is a self-governing territory, but it has this strong relationship with the Kingdom of Denmark, from which it gets things like military and defense, and also things like currency. But what I found very surprising, speaking with so many people, was that they told me to simply not to try and understand Greenland through the lens of the Inuit communities in the north of Canada, and that simply that the relationship had been different between the Danish Crown and Indigenous people and the British Crown and Indigenous people, not necessarily because it had been better, but just simply that it was a different thing. It operated on different principles. One woman explained to me that, we didn't have residential schools here. We had a different system of schooling that was very problematic, but in a different way, and was in fact, she told me it was premised on the idea of attempting to preserve Inuit in their natural habitat as noble savages, which of course has a whole series of other problems associated with it.
And Angel, you interviewed Olsvig from the ICC, and she said something actually really similar. Let's just play that clip.
It's also been important for us to convey our message as Inuit, saying that putting things a bit in perspective, in terms of not wanting to be colonized once again. We've already been colonized, and we are already working very hard to establish a more equal partnership with the state that colonized the people of this land.
So Angel, what did she mean about not wanting to be colonized again?
She did say that Denmark and Greenlanders have been working for decades through reconciliation, as we call it, making progress and building a better relationship. And then she did say, though, that if the Americans take over, that it's just another form of colonization, and that would erase all of the good work that has been done between Denmark and Greenland. One other interesting thing that I heard from people on the ground was that the U.S. threat has kind of set back decolonization, if that exists, with Denmark. People said they felt that the U.S. threat, in a way, tightened Denmark's grips back onto Greenland, for protection and for security. So that was an interesting aspect of what's going on.
Yeah, it's interesting. We feel it in different ways, don't we? Here in Canada, the U.S. threat has also changed, how consultation processes and how we think about extracting critical minerals and pipeline building and all the things as we're trying to get away from these threats from the U.S. So it's an interesting tension, even though it's playing out differently in both countries. Okay, so for both of you, what should we be watching for in the days to come? Do we trust that there's no military takeover, or is there an economic threat the way that Trump is, threatening Canada with tariffs or sanctions, as we've seen him use against other countries? What should we be watching for?
I think you're right about the tariffs, that we should be watching the tariff threats on the NATO members, which Trump said last week or so. That is one thing to watch. I'm also watching, Canada's new commitment to rebuild or build up the defense in the Arctic. But I think the main thing is the tariffs. We all have to remember that Trump is a businessman, and clearly uses tariffs as threats to get what he wants.
Indeed. And Jesse, what do you think we should keep an eye on?
Well, I agree very much with Angel on that front. One thing that was striking for me was that I knew that many of the Inuit or Kalaalleq activists that I had spoken with prior to going, and then when I arrived there, were opposed to NATO. And there is an embrace of NATO, a very sort of forceful embrace of NATO. We heard it from Jens Frederik Nielsen, the Prime Minister, but we also saw it on Friday morning when overnight these posters appeared all over bus stops in Nuuk, both in Kalaalleq and in English, with a picture of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein with their arms around each other and the legend, "Yes, NATO, no pedo." And that was, it really sort of suggested a degree of pragmatism and realpolitik in the way that some of the people are looking at the use of NATO as a means to protect them from the United States currently. Because the other thing that I heard from people was they don't take Trump at their word, so they didn't take him at his word when he said he was going to invade, and they don't take him at his word when he says he's not going to. They're just still waiting because the guy changes his mind so frequently that nobody really has the means to put any trust in his words. And so I think people are still very much uncertain and uneasy about how this might play out in the future.
Well, thank you both for being here with me today. I appreciate you. We'll keep following the story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And that is all we have time for today. Thank you for watching Nation to Nation. Next week, we'll continue this conversation by looking at how it actually feels to live through democratic change and democratic rollback. We'll speak with two people that came of age as Russia moved out of the Soviet system, through the brief opening of perestroika, and then back into the consolidation of power under Vladimir Putin. They'll share what those experiences tell them about the warning signs they see now in the United States and what we as Indigenous people in Canada should be thinking about. And finally, did you know APTN is a charity? If you like our news, you can support us. Check out the link on our website at aptnnews.ca. That's also where you'll find a podcast version of this show. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.